Hey, what's going on, guys? Back with another one. It's your host, Lifestyle Amazing, also known as Richie Skills. Today, we're going to talk about some starts. We're going to talk about some sits, some risk rewards, and some sneaky sleepers. Let's get into it real quick. Hope you guys are having an amazing day, by the way. My first start at quarterback is going to be a guy who hasn't played since last year. Is coming back off of the injury reserve. Is Kyler Murray. He's going up against the Atlanta Falcons. Falcons has been having a decent defense this year, but Murray has always been a top 10 quarterback and is a guy that you could definitely pick up, or if he's on your bench, start him this week. Another guy I'm going to be going with is going to be Dak Prescott going against the New York Giants. He's getting CeeDee Lamb involved a lot. He's got Tony Pollard running the ball. Hasn't been running too well. Prescott does love Jake Ferguson too as well. Is a guy that I want to start, especially this week. Guy who's been very, very, very good so far as a rookie, talked about him a lot, is CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud has been looking like maybe the rookie of the year and the best pick in the draft. He's going up against the Cincinnati Bengals, who might not have Jamar Chase, which doesn't do anything for Stroud, but I think that he will outperform Joe Burrow this week. Then we're going to go with some risks and rewards. These are guys that could be very, very good or could be bad, could help you or hurt you. He's coming off of his bye week. Is Brock Purdy going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. You know that game could be a shootout. Purdy has been giving the ball to Ayuk a lot. I think that he's going to be needed in this game, so I see him having a relatively successful week this week. This guy has been pretty consistent so far. Derek Carr going against the Minnesota Vikings. Carr has a lot of talent around him. I can see him having a good 15 points for you this week. So he's a guy I would definitely put in my lineup. And on the opposite side right here is Joshua Dobbs going up against the New Orleans Saints. It's a tough defense to pass on, but proven that he can actually handle the quarterback position in Minnesota. He gets the ball to his receivers. Maybe KJ Osborne gets more involved. Addison might not have the best game. TJ Hawkinson as well. So I'd start Dobbs as a risk-reward player. The guy I'm going to be sitting this week is Deshaun Watson going up against the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens have the #1 ranked defense this year, and the Browns tend to be a run-heavy team. I don't see Watson having a good game this week. Another guy I'm going to be sitting is going to be Russell Wilson going against the Buffalo Bills. The Bills will pick him off maybe once, twice. I don't see Wilson connecting with his receivers in this game. I see them maybe handing the ball off a little bit more. Sneaky sleeper for me is going to be a guy who's been up and down the last 2 weeks, is Will Levis going up against the Tampa Bay Bucks. The Bucks were known to have a good defense, but this year it hasn't been the case. So I would say Will Levis has the possibility to have a good game, great game, or he can have another bad week. But it's a chance you take. Is Taylor Heineke going up against the Arizona Cardinals. Cardinals don't really have a good defense outside of Budda Baker. I think that Heineke is going to get his players involved, but he's going to get the ball to Pitts and Smith and all those guys too as well. And that's my quarterbacks. All right, so now we're going to move on to the running backs. My start running back this week is going to be Rachaad White going up against the Tennessee Titans that are good at stopping people on the run, but White is also known as a receiving back, so I can see him having a consistent role this week. He's a guy that I would be looking to start. Another guy coming back off of an injury who was playing good before he got hurt is David Montgomery is going up against the Los Angeles Chargers. This is going to be a high-scoring game. As long as Herbert starts connecting with current receivers that he has. He lost Palmer. He's got Johnson. But it's all about Montgomery right now. Gibbs has been filling in well in his role, but Montgomery has the ability to run through people and possibly score you a touchdown. And my last guy, who's a rookie, he's not consistent. Arthur Smith doesn't like fantasy, doesn't want him to, run the ball or be one of the top running backs because he's a running team and now he doesn't want to run. Doesn't make sense to me. Ben Robinson going up against the Arizona Cardinals as a guy that you can't bench if you drafted him. Okay, a risk-reward player at running back for me is going to be Keaton Mitchell of the Baltimore Ravens going up against the Cleveland Browns, going against a tough run defense. He's a guy that I would put on my bench, sit, see what happens, see if he continues to do what he did last week, and then if he does, put him in a lineup, great. If not, then maybe you can move on from him. And then we got another guy who hasn't been consistent. They said he was overweight coming into the season, but Najee Harris going up against the Green Bay Packers. The Packers will set them up in good red zone position. So I think that Harris has a chance to score a touchdown, maybe 10 rushes, 54 yards and a touchdown. He's a backup, but he's been playing well since Montgomery was out. Gibbs going up against the Los Angeles Chargers. I still think Gibbs plays an important role in this offense, so I would definitely put him in my lineup as maybe an RB2, RB3, maybe a flex play. Sits for me is going to be Jerome Ford going up against the Baltimore Ravens. Like I told you, the Ravens have a great defense this year. Ford has been splitting with Kareem Hunt, and Hunt's been getting the touchdowns. Ford's been getting more of the receiving work, so that's a guy that I would not want to start this week. Another guy I'm going to bench, guys that just took over the starting role, is Chuba Hubbard going up against the Chicago Bears. I think the Bears are going to play a really good defense, especially trading for Sweat. So I don't like Chuba Hubbard this week, especially with Miles Sanders still getting some carries too as well. And then a sneaky sleeper for me at running back is going to be Ramondre Stevenson against the Indianapolis Colts. He had a very good game last week, but is he going to be consistent enough? I don't know. That's why he's a risk reward for me this week. And then we got a guy coming back off an injury, James Conner, going up against the Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons have been having a good defense, but Conner is known to be able to run through tackles. As long as he's healthy, he should be a good start, but we won't know until we see him play. Okay? And then now I'm going to go on to the wide receivers. A start for me at wide receiver. A lot of people have benched him lately, but since Levis has taken over, DeAndre Hopkins against the Tampa Bay Bucks, he's a guy that gets a lot of volume and has a good catch radius. So he's a guy that I would definitely be looking to start this week. And then we got another guy who gets a lot of passes too as well, is Nico Collins, maybe a DeAndre Hopkins 2.0. Nico Collins is dealing with a little bit of an injury, but I think he'll be good in this game going up against the Cincinnati Bengals. And the last start, it was a waiver pickup. We're going to see what he's doing. There's a couple of injuries in New England. So Demario Douglas versus the Indianapolis Colts. I think he's going to have a good week. I don't know if it's going to be spectacular, but I think that he's good enough to put in your starting lineup. Okay, and then a risk reward wide receivers for me is going to be Noah Brown, because we haven't seen the consistency. We've seen him have one good week. He had 153 yards last week. So will he repeat that? Probably not, but he's going up against the Cincinnati Bengals where they're going to have to pass the ball. So I think he's a good option and a risk-reward player this week. Another guy, which is kind of crazy for me to be putting him on this list, but it's Calvin Ridley versus the San Francisco 49ers. We know the 49ers are a good defense, but they're not the greatest against the wide receiver position. They're better at stopping the run, maybe stopping some tight ends too as well. So I think that Ridley has a chance to break out, but he also has a chance to bust. So that's why he's a risk reward for me this week. And then another guy who's been consistent since Justin Jefferson went down is Jordan Addison going up against the New Orleans Saints. I don't like any wide receiver, especially a number one wide receiver, going up against the Saints secondary. I don't see them having a successful week, especially this week too. So he's a guy that if you got him, you got to play him, but I'm not too excited about or thrilled about it. And then a sit for me, this one kind of hurts me a little bit because I wouldn't want to sit this guy, is Zay Flowers versus the Cleveland Browns. The Browns have very good cornerbacks, and Flowers, all depends on how Lamar Jackson plays and who he gets involved. We all know he loves Mark Andrews, but I see Flowers maybe struggling in this game. Then another guy is going to be Quentin Johnson of the Los Angeles Chargers going up against the Detroit Lions. I don't want no part of him. He might break out eventually, but right now is not the time for him to break out. Definitely not this week. So we can hold him and see what happens, but I'm just not excited to be playing him. And then another guy who's a sleeper for me, the wide receiver 2 of this team, is Jerry Jeudy going up against the Buffalo Bills. Top corner will be on Sutton, so I think Jeudy will have a couple of short passes thrown to him. I think that he's going to have a consistent week. He's a sleeper for me for sure this week. And then JSN going up against the Washington Commanders. JSN has been stepping up of late in the season, and with the injury DK Metcalf, I think that JSN has the ability to be consistent. Now we're going to go on to tight ends. My start of the week at tight end is going to be Dalton Kincaid, the rookie, versus Denver. I believe he's out of Utah. So yeah, I think that he's going to have another good week. He's going to get you probably 15 points. They're using him a lot right now, and Josh Allen is putting a lot of faith and trust in him. Another guy is going to be the do-it-all tight end, I guess, quarterback, running back, whatever he is. It could be every position on the team. It's Taysom Hill versus the Minnesota Vikings. We don't know how the Vikings are going to be able to stop his type of talent. So he's a guy I'm definitely putting in my starting lineup this week. And then another guy who's been dealing with a little bit of injury, but I think they cleared him as healthy this week, is Cole Kmet, going against the Carolina Panthers, who have some horrible playing so far. They haven't been able to really stop much. I think that Kmet has a big game this week. And then a risk reward for me is going to be a guy who stepped up last week, is Cade Otton. He had 2 touchdowns, 20-something points. He's going up against the Tennessee Titans, where they're going to have to pass on because they're good at stopping the run. I see Otton having some chemistry with Baker Mayfield this week. And then we got risk reward player for me is a guy who's been stepping up ever since Zach Ertz went down, is Trey McBride, going up against the Atlanta Falcons. I think that McBride is going to be a guy that he looks to target, especially Murray coming back off his injury. He's going to try to work his way back, starting role in his chemistry, and McBride's going to be a big part of that. This guy is a risk reward for me. He's very consistent at tight end, but it all depends on who the quarterback is hitting off. And it's going to be Dalton Schultz going up against the Cincinnati Bengals. I think Schultz is going to be needed in this game and relied on a little bit more than in some of the past games. But he's been on a consistency streak. So I think that Schultz is definitely a guy that could be a risk reward player this week. And then a sit for me is going to be David Njoku against the Baltimore Ravens. You know, my grandmother was a fan of the Ravens. I think that the Ravens could stop everybody on the Browns. I don't like Njoku this week. Maybe he gets a cheap touchdown. Maybe he gets 2 catches. Maybe he gets 0. We don't know, but we'll find out from the bench. Another guy who's been consistent, but I don't really like him this week, is Evan Ingram going up against the San Francisco 49ers. I think Evan Ingram with Lawrence, there's too many guys around. He's a guy I'm sitting this week. A sneaky sleeper for me is going to be Jake Ferguson going up against the New York Giants. And Jake Ferguson has a lot of chemistry with Prescott, so there's a chance that he has a big game. He also has a lot of talent around him, so we don't know yet. Another sleeper for me is going to be Luke Musgrave. He has the talent. Love just has to get him the ball. Musgrave could be a sneaky sleeper going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers this week. My start of the week at defense is going to be Seattle versus the Washington Commanders. A risk reward defense is going to be the Bucks versus the Tennessee Titans. My sit is going to be Cleveland versus Baltimore. And then my sleeper is going to be the Bears versus the Carolina Panthers. So they're a sleeper for me. Well, that's it for me, guys. Thanks for listening. Good luck this week. I hope you guys have an amazing day. And we'll be here next week to talk about Week 11. So have a good one, man. Peace.